Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Jimmy of House Nuts. And today we have an episode where we're going to be doing a little bit of Q&A. Me and Matt have some questions that bounce back and forth off each other. We're actually also live here on YouTube right now, and we're going to be taking some questions from the chat as well. We thought this would be a really good idea because, I'm a new co-host, and me and Matt have known each other for a long time. I've done a lot of different appearances here on the show, but I think it's good to set some baselines so people know what they're dealing with, maybe who some of my favorites are, and people can find out what I'm all about. And also, Matt, I have questions that I don't know if you've answered. So
yeah, and you can ask us A Song of Ice and Fire questions as well. It's just a fun hangout. Holiday weekends coming up here, holiday week, with Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. So just fun, just absolutely fun. I just got a new puppy, by the way, guys. New little direwolf. Yes, Cheddar, a golden retriever. I have not slept this week. She's 8 weeks old. It's a lot of fun, but we're working on some, Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire related tricks. Getting there, First we got to get sit down, which actually she's pretty good at, but we're getting it going. So yeah, just give everyone a second to kind of pile in here. Got TK in here. Good evening, all. Looking forward to a good live stream. Kevin in here. Let's go, Kevin. Also, with the first question.
Well, let's just jump right into it.
Let's just dive right in, my friend. For Jimmy, rate Allison's Stinky Stompers on a scale of 1 to 10.
I would give them a 6.9.
Whoa. Okay.
The bigger question is, what would Larys give him? Do you think he was impressed? Was he like, I expected more?
I don't know. All I know is, man, Olivia Cook's Instagram is wild.
Really?
And her all the pictures that I was it's every time I go on Twitter, it's Olivia Cook, and she's doing all kinds of modeling stuff. It's whoa.
Well, I mean, she's definitely a beautiful woman and a great actress, and we're really lucky to have her as Allison, I think. I wonder what Larys would rate. What would you give him, Matt?
10.
You give him a 10?
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. That's the realm's feet, my friend.
The realm's feet.
Okay.
The realm's pigs. All right.
Jessica here. Yeah. So if you guys are going live, love the podcast, listen all the way through Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Jimmy, tell Matt why he should read Malazan. I tried it, couldn't get into it, but maybe perhaps someday audiobook. I will. Mm-hmm.
Audiobooks.
Well, I tried the audiobook, but I was, it was back in my old job when it was I was kind of busy listening to audiobooks, not as well as my new job. So maybe I can. What do you guys think of Daemon and Rhaenyra's storyline? Do you think they will keep the story true to the book? So I don't really know how spoilery we want to go tonight.
I think we should keep it relatively spoiler free.
If we could potentially keep it season 1 spoiler free, but I guess I would say I feel very confident they're going to be pretty accurate to it. I think they'll be incredibly accurate to it.
Yeah, I think that with a lot of the context now around scenes and some of the additional ones like Daemon choking Rhaenyra in season 1, I think that just because of added context, it may seem different, but I do think all the plot points are going to be hit on with some extra ones added in. So I think there'll be a lot of additions. I don't necessarily think there'll be subtractions, if that is a good answer for you, Ari. But yeah, it'll be something to see where it all ends up and how Rhaenyra's storyline ends up playing out. I'm very, very excited for one to see that.
Yeah. Okay, Jimmy, you and I came up with some questions we thought would be fun to bounce back and forth.
Yes.
And let me hit you with my first one. So, best casting and worst casting in both Game of Thrones and House of the, you can pick combined, which one do you think is the best casting and what do you think is the worst casting?
Oh my God.
This would be Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. You can choose whichever one.
Wow. Okay. I just got to take a second here. I'm drinking a little Game of Thrones Tully Scotch. Shout out to the
Let's go.
Riverlands. We're doing a little Tully. River Run
And you
represent.
could pick, you could pick like 2 or 3, or you could do like, I'll do House of Dragon, I'll do Game, however you want to do it. Doesn't matter to me. But
Oh man, I mean, so the thing about it is that Game of Thrones feels like it has more characters because it has more seasons and a bigger story, right? A lot more prominent characters than House of the Dragon. I mean, House of the Dragon also has a ton as well. It would be offensive for me not to pick Peter Dinklage as Tyrion. And I know that he's not book accurate. I wish he wasn't so damn handsome because I love that Tyrion is like a bit disformed in the books and like really a monster to other people. I wish that Peter Dinklage was uglier. I'm sure he would love to hear me say that, but it is really hard to pick against Tyrion. Even, you know, and also in the book, he's like my favorite character. So even with him not really portraying, you know, the character in the book looks wise, I just think that Tyrion makes that show work on so many levels, whether it's him joking with Bronn about Podrick and the girls, right? I mean, it's just, he provides a range to that show and a different lens as a POV that no one else really could. So I got to say, I just think Peter Dinklage was the best casting. Now, the worst casting. Ooh, that's a tough one.
Now, just so you know, I have my next question. I mean, we'll do yours, but I have another question, which is like adaptations.
Okay.
Because those are different. There's a difference between a cast who was poorly cast and who's a bad adaptation. So there you go.
Okay. There are not many bad castings, in my opinion. So I'm gonna pick Ed Sheeran as a random stand-in in Game of Thrones. It was a stupid casting, and I didn't like it. How about that? It's a cop-out.
Okay. I think that's fair. So do I get to go? I don't know. Yeah. Questions. Okay. So for me, best casting, I mean, it's really hard to pick against Peter Dinklage, who in all honesty is probably the best cast. Charles, we have a comment here. Charles Dance as Tywin.
That's a good one.
So freaking
so good.
Like it's so unbelievably.
Lena Headey. Cersei. I mean, there's no bad castings in the Lannister family.
No. I know who I have as my poor casting, so I'm gonna get it pulled up here. But yeah, so best casting for me, I mean, Sean Bean as Eddard Stark is just so good.
Epic. Yeah.
And Mark Addy as Robert Baratheon.
That was going to be my backup.
So it's just such a perfect role. You know, some of these characters, because, you know, like, I mean, Kit Harington is Jon Snow. Like he grew into the role, but immediately he is the character from the books, right? I mean, he's just immediately. Matt Smith as Daemon is also like really good. I mean, for House of the Dragon, I guess I'll go that route since he did Game of Thrones. Matt Smith to me was the perfect Daemon Targaryen in so many ways. He was the perfect cast. One, he's perfect for the role because he has a huge range as an actor. He just came off of The Crown, so it's like now like it works well. That goes well with Game of Thrones, and then you have him as this lead for House of the Dragon, the new show that's got to come in and absolutely take it over. So I mean, since you did the true GOAT, which is Peter Dinklage, Matt Smith. What if we pick I want to stay on this one. Oh, my worst casting. Let me do that.
Yeah, what is it?
Worst casting is Ed Skrein, who is the first Dario Naharis. I didn't like him. Not even because he was only there for one season. I just didn't like it.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. I think that's fair. I picked Ed Sheeran, so
right. Yeah, the shows are very well cast. Okay, so you get a question here.
Well, I also just want to point this out that Kev said that we misspelled characters in our upload today.
Oh, I'll fix it.
We are not infallible, okay? We're not infallible.
Yeah, I'll fix it. I'm on this week. I'm on like very mixed sleep.
Yeah, and Matt's carrying the load over here, so
yeah,
all props to him. Before I ask you my question, though,
Yes.
There is someone on Facebook right now saying Jessica Rose Stoddard says, "Sorry guys, off topic. I never read the books, and I'm going back and doing that now. I was reading stuff online. And it talks about Jon Snow having a twin. Is that just fan writing, or did the show just deviate from that? I know the show went ahead of the books, and this has me so confused. That is a theory, one that we can definitely cover here on the show if you're interested. I think a lot of people like that theory. There are some pieces of proof. I don't want to say proof, but that kind of lean that way in evidence." So maybe me and Matt, we're going to be doing some theory videos here in a few weeks, and that might be one that we end up covering. But Jessica, you shouldn't be confused. That is not canon. It is just a theory that some fans have come up with. So
yeah, and yeah, one of those is that his twin may be Mira Reed. So that's
that is the theory.
There's also other theories out there. There's just an unknown twin we don't know about, right? I mean, there's a lot.
Maybe it's young Griff.
Well, it could be.
Who knows?
Yeah, could be. So, okay, what you get? Your question.
All right, so mine's actually going to be pretty basic. Okay, I want to get back to basics here. What is your favorite house in A Song of Ice and Fire?
Ooh.
And if you have a different one from the show, you can do it. You can pick two if you'd like. If you want to do a book specific one and a show specific one, because I have one for each.
Yeah. My favorite. It's hard to say because for me it really comes down to favorite characters, and so I tend to prefer like those characters more, because the history we get so much on the Targaryen side, we don't get a lot from these other houses, and then of course, well, it's not confirmed in the books yet. I mean, 99% likely that Jon Snow is a Targaryen. That causes me to lean towards House Targaryen as my favorite house. But I have some things that I qualify people as sort of specific things. So I'm a big believer. Right now we're on Team Black versus Team Green. Who's in the right? One of my favorite characters is Daemon Targaryen, not the one we're reading about right now. The real Daemon.
The
Targaryen,
real, okay.
Otherwise known as Daemon Blackfyre, because he was legitimized by Aegon the Fourth. So you could say that I'm kind of a Blackfyre supporter too.
All right. I respect that answer. I do.
But yeah, and if it doesn't end up working out that Jon is a Targaryen in the books, then House Stark will probably be my favorite.
Cool. I think for me, for the show, I would pick the Lannisters just because they're so well acted. It just there's literally not a bad Lannister in the bunch. I mean, maybe morally bad. My favorite house from A Song of Ice and Fire, the books, though, House Dane. Dane has so many mysteries around it. The Sword of the Morning. There's a lot to love there, and I think they're going to have a big role to play when we get the last two books, when or if we get the last two books. So House Dane is actually my favorite house in A Song of Ice and Fire, and I know Sir Matthew Perry is pumping his fist right now.
Yes. Somebody said I want that jacket. So yeah, I actually got this for Christmas like 2 years ago from my now stepmother-in-law. And she bought me a Game of Thrones bathrobe, House Stark, and I never really wear it, mostly because I feel like if I wash it once, it's gonna like ruin it. So but I decided I'd bust it out.
Yeah, and for those who are only listening on audio, it's this beautiful black robe with a snowy collar with a Stark wolf head embedded on the tit, and it is excellent.
And then underneath, I'm wearing my White Claws Weights and Protein Shakes t-shirt, which you can buy on the Bend the Knee Tea Public store if you want.
Love to see it.
Love to see it. Okay. All right. So my question, Jimmy. So this one's a little bit different. So character who you thought was better in the books and a character who you thought was better in the show.
Okay.
Now again, this could be House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones.
Gosh, there are so very many.
Right.
I would say a character that is better in the show would be Probably Braun. I think Braun in the show is given a lot more, obviously. And he's good in the books, but I think in the show he really came into his own and obviously became a fan favorite. So I'm gonna pick that answer. That one's a little easier. When it comes to the books, the character that I like more than the show, can I pick one that's not even in the show? I can't. That's not fair.
Right.
Hmm. I would say in the books, I ended up liking Mance Rayder a bit more than I did of him in the show. I think that's a pretty safe bet. Not that he was bad in the show, but in the books, playing a way bigger role. Obviously, his fate is much different in the books as well, at least as far as we know. So I think that would be my pick. If I had to pick one that I think is like really good in both, like excellent, is Theon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Theon's excellent in both.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to go pick anybody in House of the Dragon because like they're all better in the show, and even like George Martin has said it because you get like more depth and everything. I mean, Viserys is obviously way better.
Yeah, how about this? All the characters are better in House of the Dragon than they are in Fire and Blood because there's actually characterization. Like that's
right.
No,
but that was going to be my pick, and I've said it on the show before. Is that Mance Rayder to me is by far the most underutilized character in the show because he is an enormous deal in the books.
Yes,
he's mentioned in like the first 5 chapters, every chapter.
Yeah,
of a Game of Thrones, and then obviously I'm still kind of a big believer of the he's Rhaegar theory.
You still like it?
Oh yeah. To me it makes so much sense. I'm so into that theory. And he's just a boss, and he's still alive, and he's a huge deal. The actor who played him, I thought was very good as Mance Rayder. I just wish they would have carried that story forward a little bit. And then here's another one. By far, Euron is way better.
Euron's the biggest one. Let's be honest. I just forgot. I kind of forgot.
I would say Mance is equally as big.
I think Euron. I think the implications of Euron are so much more major towards the ending of the story, and what they did in making him like a backwoods Bam Margera just didn't work at all in the show.
No,
and it was very disappointing. So, yeah, the Euron one, I think it would probably take my number one spot. You'll have to forgive us. We didn't pre-script any of this. This is live questions.
We're just live question, and we just winging it. But
so I would change my mind.
Yeah, so for me, a character who was better. If I really had to pick, I was gonna say I was gonna go with Mance as my bad one, but then you stuck.
Well, now you can just say Euron and be right.
Right. I guess I can just say Euron. But yeah, another character. I'll pick a Game of Thrones character who I thought was better. In all honesty, he's amazing in the books, but I love the Hound. I love the Hound. The chicken scene to me is just so funny. So good.
Yeah, you know what?
It is just one of the most epic moments in Game of Thrones. Like, it's the moment when I want to show something. Like, I remember my mom, when she was like asking about Game of Thrones, I was like, I'm gonna show you one scene to to show you and I showed her that scene. She was like, whoa, I was like, yeah, that was this is why you should watch Game of Thrones scene.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Hound is definitely brought to life by that actor, and then the extra lines that are given to him. I like that. That's a great pick.
Yeah. Some other ones just off the top of my head. I think Khal Drogo is better in the show.
He was in my head for that. Yeah.
Just because it's Jason Momoa.
You could argue that Robert Baratheon's better in the show than the books too.
Definitely.
I think Mark Addy, especially like the extra scene with Cersei and all those things, really gave us a little bit more from Robert. We get a lot of Robert from Ned's POV most, right? In her thoughts, which is good. It's great in the book. But I think that the show has those few extra scenes like the breastplate stretcher and stuff. So you could probably argue that Bobby B is also a little bit better in the show, I would say.
I think you could almost argue. Now, this might tick some people off because of his character arc.
Okay.
But I've always loved in Game of Thrones, especially season 1, where George was like sort of more involved in the first 4 seasons, that we get some extra scenes with Jaime Lannister And
Okay.
I've always felt like it's just made me appreciate his character more. And I feel like he comes across as more of that villain than he does in the books, because Jaime is not very much in the first book. He doesn't get a POV until the Storm of Swords. You barely even see him. You just hear about him. He's only in like a handful of scenes. Same thing with Joffrey. In all honesty, Joffrey, way better character in the show. Like, it's not anything. It's comparable.
Yeah, I would agree with you about Jaime if the book of Feast for Crows didn't exist. That book is like the Jaime book, and I personally think that Jaime is like one of the best characters in all of the fantasy genre. Like, I think
Right.
actually,
Oh,
how
he
about
is.
like I think a Feast for Crows does a lot of service for Jaime, and where Jaime and I like Jaime in the show. But the whole Dune subplot with him and Bronn going down there and stuff like that, I felt like what was done in Feast for
Dorne
Crows. Yeah,
subplot.
yeah. What did I say?
Dune. I mean, hey.
I said Dune. My God, I got Dune on the brain. But yeah, so for me, I think Feast for Crows, like I think they're both great, but Feast for Crows is like one of my favorite books because of those Jaime POVs of him going through the Riverlands and being obsessed with, did Cersei bang Moon Boy? Like, did it happen?
Did it happen? Maybe. I did a whole video on it. I'm gonna do another one. Question from Jordan here. He says, I don't think you guys are taking questions. No, we are. It's a Q&A, man. Ask away, guys, in the chat. But which POV would you be most excited to see in Winds or Dream? Has to be a new POV. I don't think we're getting any new POVs.
We're not getting any new ones, according to George. He said he is done adding POVs.
But which POV
would we like to see?
Would you like to see? Yes.
Young Griff.
Okay.
That'd be my pick.
I'm very excited to see the POV of, I think we are going to get it. I think we're going to get a Jon dead POV.
A ghost POV?
No, I don't even know that we're going to get it as ghost. I think we might get it like, it might be ghost, but then it's going to be Jon like coming back to life POV. I think it's going to be badass.
Undead Jon. I like it.
Yeah. Well, not undead. He is dead, but it's like, where is he at? Is he in like the spirit,
Yeah.
Spirit, like whatever. Yeah. I think we're going to get something like that where it's
I feel like I have a pretty good insight of what's going to happen with him. But I won't say it because it spoils another book. That's great.
Comment here from TK saying TV Joffrey is just so good. The actor did so well, especially thinking he was so young when he did it. Yeah. Just absolutely so good.
I was watching an interview with him. He's a really nice guy. It's weird.
I think it's Nick Gleason is his name.
Yeah, I think so. It's really weird that he played such a diabolical character because he seems like it's just a swell guy.
Yeah, he hasn't really been in much. He's in Batman Begins, and he's in like Game of Thrones, and like that's kind of it. And then he took a huge break from He's like now starting to get back into it. But he talked about like being typecast and stuff like that. But he's a very nice guy.
Nice.
Okay.
So,
I went last, so I think it's your turn for a new question.
Yes. So if you were buying some real estate and you're, I know you're newly married and I know you got old cheddar biscuits over there, your new dog. So you're looking to buy a plot of land and you're looking at all of Plantos, not just Westeros, but all of Plantos. Where would you take residence? Where would you live in Plantos?
Wow. Good question. It's a good question because I guess I need to ask some contingencies.
Okay.
What time period is it?
I'll tell you what. We'll go with what is current in the books. So this is post Red Wedding Westeros.
Okay, so post Red Wedding Westeros. Well, that changes a lot. Okay.
The future's unclear, right?
Right. Like, I would never want to live in like High Garden in the Reach seems like the nicest place. I mean, everyone talks about how great it is. The Tyrells are in power. They seem like a pretty big house. Even when we go to the Reach in like Dunk and Egg stories, it's pretty cool. I mean,
It's
it's
not
just
bad.
it's pretty cool hanging out there. So I'd probably live somewhere in the Reach on the coast. If you live over there, you're far enough away from the Greyjoys to where you don't really have to worry about being plundered because you're sort of protected by Lannisport. And then that side of Dorne, there's not really a whole lot going on. So really, you're just kind of out there. You got all the natural resources. I think the Riverlands is a terrible place to live because that's where all the warring happens. The North is not a bad place to live in terms of the general history because the Starks are pretty good at holding it at bay, but it's so big that it's kind of hard to hold any ground. I wouldn't want to live anywhere near King's Landing because it just like there's a lot of chaos and then like lots of people, poor people.
You're not a city boy.
Not that city. It's a dirty, grungy city. So I'm saying, probably somewhere in the Reach.
I'm going to Volantis because I'm a degenerate and there's naked people there. Bravos, Volantis. I'd be a little bit nomadic, but I'd be over in Essos. I'd be smoking on the pipe weed, visiting some of these exotic brothels, these type of things. If I'm settling down with the family, you're going to see me over there in Dorne. You're okay. You're going to see me in Starfall. I'm going to be chilling in the desert. I'm going to have a nice base tan and maybe settle some land disputes as a hedge knight,
Yeah. Okay, I got another question here in the chat. Follow-up POV question to the one we answered a few minutes ago here. What do you think of the final chapter of Dream's POV will be, assuming we get there?
Bran.
Yeah, probably.
I think it begins with Bran. Yeah, series begins with Bran and it'll end with Bran.
Yeah, I agree. Some other people said Jordan in the chat saying, "Hey, I want to live in the Eyrie for sure." That's not a bad spot. You just gotta watch out those mountain clans. Cagos, who knows, man?
Unicorns, bro.
The North is closest to where that's sort of where I grew up and feel comfy, but so much crazy stuff.
There's the whole zombie thing and wildling raiders. Yeah. The Greyjoys are constantly trying to siege you and being annoying.
You don't want to live anywhere near the Boltons, like
no.
So yeah.
No.
Bear Island? I don't know. The Mormons seemed like they're kind of poor. You never know what you're gonna get.
Hey, what's your problem with poor people, bro?
Well, I mean, it's just like, poor people. Hold on, we're not talking about like it's not like today. It's not like I have a problem with like homeless people in like modern America.
I think you're a bit classist, Matt.
But in medieval times, yeah, you'd have to be. I mean, you have to be.
You got that robe over there looking all smug. You got this new puppy. I mean, come on.
All right. Well, here's another one. Here's my next question for you. Single dumbest A Song of Ice and Fire theory you've ever read or seen.
Oh my god. Tyrion is a time traveling Targaryen fetus is easily the dumbest shit I've ever heard. You've never heard this? That he's supposedly like this time traveling fetus. We should cover it. It's ridiculous and people believe it. I mean, it's a fun theory, but it is total hogwash.
Okay, I'm unfamiliar with that one. I'll have to investigate.
Oh my. Yeah, the time traveling fetus. I don't know who did that. It might have been Preston Jacobs. He does a lot of out there theories, but I remember just reading it and being like, no, we've went too far.
Yeah. For me, I think the two that sort of come across as like, I don't know, dumb or like there's like no way that's a thing. Is Roose Bolton undead? Or is Varys a merman? And I think the is Varys a merman one kind of to me is like even more ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like I think that it like I get the argument for it, which is like, how does he move across like everything so quickly? And then he has the weird conversation with the priest who like told him something, and what's all that about? But I think it's more likely that Roose Bolton is undead than it is Varys is a merman.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research in on this back in the day because I do think at least the Boltons are supposed to be like this, kind of like a Mr. Crowley type character, right? Or maybe Dracula. So I ended up reading George's Fever Dream book, which is his vampire novel set in like the late 1800s on steam like tugboats down in Louisiana, Mississippi, and stuff. Really cool horror book. And I looked at the descriptions of the vampires compared to Roose Bolton's, and there's a lot of similarities in the way that he describes Roose Bolton to the vampires in his book. So I thought that was a little bit of, at least of maybe a hint that Roose Bolton is supposed to give us that little bit of a vampire feel.
Yeah. Okay. Question here. Dumbest mistake a character. This is from the chat. Dumbest mistake a character makes in the books where they should have known better. So not necessarily like a Sansa, moment where she's unsure of herself.
Oh, Rob.
Yeah, probably.
It's a big fallout.
Is it as dumb as the Viper? Not just finishing off the mountain.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. I mean, if you look at Rob's, it literally changed like the entire layout of Westeros, right? Like it had bigger fall. But I will say the Viper, it was very Hollywood, where it's like, oh my god, I know what's gonna happen.
Even in the books.
Yeah, it's like, I know you're mad, dude, because you just finished the job and then talk smack to his dead corpse. Like, could we do that? That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Ned not taking Renly's offer.
No, see, I don't know about that, because that's like Ned's like honor and personality and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, hindsight's 2020. I'm definitely
right.
Oh, Quentin is a good one. Quentin Martell thinking he's the dragon tamer, and George taking us on the fairy tale journey.
Yeah, but does that almost fall into like the Sansa moment where he's just like,
well, Sansa never gets burned by dragons, so I feel like his mistake, he gets punished way worse.
In the show, it's got to be Vaemond. That's like the dumbest thing I've ever, like the biggest idiot I've ever seen.
Yeah, we all knew that he was done as he starts opening his mouth.
Another question here from the chat. I have a question just because it's fresh in my mind because we're reading Fire and Blood. And if you covered this theory, I'll look it up. But what do you think was in Aegon's first letter?
Are you talking about whenever Dorne sends him that letter and then he ceases to try to conquer Dorne?
No, I wonder if they're thinking maybe they're talking about like the prophecy of Song of Ice and Fire. I want could you in the chat, could you leave another comment and sort of
just clarify that one?
Clarify.
I mean, to be honest, Aegon the Conqueror's letter, that doesn't clarify it too much. But if you're talking about the one that he gets sent from Dorne and he just ceases to attack Dorne anymore, I have no idea what's in that letter, and it's one of the biggest questions in all of the Song of Ice and Fire.
Right.
From Dorne. Yeah, from Dorne is what they're asking. What do you have any idea what it is, Matt? Like, do you have any hunches?
No.
Do you have any feelings?
I have no idea.
I heard some people say that, maybe the dragon was still alive. I've seen many things proposed, but I have no idea what it really could be. I'm up to hear some theories. So if you got any theories, hit us up, send us a raven, because we would definitely cover that.
Yeah. Okay, Jimmy, your next question.
Is it my question or your question?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because mine was single dumbest theory.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go back to a pretty basic question here. Who is your favorite non-POV character from the books that doesn't have a POV chapter with their name on it?
Good question. So non-POV character in the books. Wow. Gotta think about that. I mean, Rob is kind of easy because he's a non-POV character. I mean, Robert Baratheon doesn't have a POV. I like Benjen for the little bit we see him, right?
Yeah.
But Tywin, even book Tywin, I think show Tywin's actually better than book Tywin, but I'd have to say that. Oh, Stannis, easily. Or the Hound. Nope, it'd be the Hound technically because he doesn't have a POV.
Stannis is my pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stannis is my pick. I think Stannis is one of the more interesting characters that we don't get to get into the head of. Robb Stark is obviously a really good one, and George actually has went on record saying that he regrets not writing a POV from Robb Stark and wishes that he would have. Also, how about Peter Baelish?
Yeah.
Peter Baelish. Like, we forget he's not a POV, you know? So he has to be up there. Many great characters. Marjorie's another great one.
Maester Aemon.
Aemon. There's tons of history there he could tell us. So plenty to pick from, but I think we're both in agreement that it's Stannis the Manus, the one true king. Yeah.
Well, that one, so that kind of ties into my next question, which is, who are your top 3 favorite characters in all of A Song of Ice and Fire?
Okay. So number 1 is Tyrion. Number 2,
and it can be a blend of show, however you want it. You can say like show specific. What are you going to do?
I'll go all books because I prefer the books over the show. So I'm going to pick Tyrion. Number 2, Jaime, and number 3, Daenerys. Actually, I really love A Dance with Dragons, especially after this last reread I did last year. I really enjoy that POV. I know some people think it drags, but I love it. So that would be my 3, and that's like from the hip. If I thought about it a little bit more, maybe I would change it up. But those are my top 3.
Yeah, I will say Daenerys is a character who, especially, and I talk about this a lot in whenever whenever we were covering Game of Thrones, is and George, there's actually some very, I'll look it up and see. It was released in some sort of like fantasy, I don't know, magazine or something, as a companion piece at one point in the 90s. But he broke down, and you can actually read start to finish Dany as a POV, like just like it's like 10 chapters of a Game of Thrones, and it was released as like this little volume. The problem with, I think the reason people don't like her POVs is just because it feels too far away. It's a long time before her POVs feel like they're connected to anybody. Like, really, it's not even until like Barristan Selmy shows up that it's like, okay, now I feel like it's somewhat connected. Like in a Game of Thrones, it's totally off, and it just like you're sort of in this headspace before the world starts opening up. But I think she's by far one of the best just POV reads because her story's fairly isolated from everyone else's. So I'm totally fine. Having Dany in your top 3 is nothing wrong at all with with that. For me, Jon is my number 1 favorite character in both the show and the books. My second is Duncan the Tall, easily.
Let's go.
I love the Hedge Knights books. I read those more than I read the main series. It's always my like go back.
They're so good.
So freaking good. Go back and read. And then my third favorite character, I don't know what it is, but I just find myself more and more, and I think the show adaptation of this character was good, but I feel like the book character is literally like the most likely to be the biggest game-changing character, and it's honestly become Sansa over the years. I feel like her role in Winds and Dream of Spring is she's dependent really on a lot of other factors, and I think it's probably George talks about like Cersei was a big block for him, but Sansa's kind of the chess piece that can move, and wherever he decides to go, it literally changes everything. If she, because she's not in position to go be where she is in the final few seasons. She is in position to go marry young Griff. She is in position to take the Knights of the Vale and march them over, and she can do whatever she wants. So it's so intriguing, and I just feel more and more like I'm just so excited to see like how her role of progressing, like where we leave her, is so exciting with the like her beginning to sort of learn the Game of Thrones, and it feels like she's about to take over. Now, could change if she doesn't, if it doesn't end up being anything big. Like her role in the show kind of felt like she was really going to lead something, and then it kind of faltered a bit. But so did the show. So we'll see.
Sansa also in the books plays a really important role for what George set out to accomplish with the Song of Ice and Fire, which was to subvert a lot of the fantasy genre back in the 90s. And when you read Sansa, the big difference between something the show can't do and something the books do is that she is actually a kind of a meta stand-in for the typical fantasy reader and the typical fantasy character. She believes in knights coming to save her, falling in love, and the good people will win the war, and all of these things. And Sansa has to go through a lot of traumatic events in the book and see her family perish. And it is a way of George saying, no, that's not how the story goes. So Sansa is, in a way, a vehicle for George to start subverting those expectations, which is one of the reasons why Song of Ice and Fire is so prominent in the fantasy genre. It's why he's probably the most influential author since Tolkien in this genre. So Sansa is extremely important as a POV choice for George. And I think what we're going to see is the transformation of Sansa into taking agency in her own hands and maybe even doing some diabolical stuff. And I think it also kind of speaks to the transformation of the genre as a whole and fantasy readers as a whole, because we expect very different things from fantasy now than we did back in the 80s, 70s, 60s, and 50s. And even before then with some of the myths. So I think Sansa is an excellent vehicle for George to explore these things. And whenever you go back on a reread, I think she has a lot of value there, especially if you're someone who does read a lot of fantasy like I do. You can see him playing with the genre's expectations in her lens. So,
yeah, I was going back to look because I knew I was like, Ez and I a while back did we ranked all the POV chapters, and I'd love to actually do it again. We're sort of just ranking the POV characters, but we did it with the idea of them as a POV like driver, right?
mm-hmm.
Because some characters, Sansa, unfortunately, she has some benefits and some things as just specifically as like the POV character, but as just a regular character, one of the things I love is really more than just about anybody. Sansa has a very particularly interesting view and how we view her, because her POV is, you actually don't get as many of them as you really think you do, because you get a lot of her story in Game of Thrones is told through Arya's and Ned's point of views. But then sometimes when you get hers, you get to see the cracks in their armor, right? And then her role kind of shifts in the second book, and the third book, when she gets married to Tyrion, and you get some of it are Tyrion chapters and some of it is Sansa chapters. And so it's just really interesting to kind of see her character develop these different through these different lenses and what lenses she provides. Like one of my favorite Sansa chapters is actually, and one of the things I think is honestly peak George writing, is the Battle of the Blackwater, and that it's so interesting that it's bouncing around between all these different people. Like you start off with Davos, then you go to Tyrion, and then you go to Sansa, and you do the sort of back and forth between Tyrion and Sansa. And so we're getting to see the like women hiding, and she's with Cersei, but it's all told through Sansa's point of view. It's so so interesting. So it's one of the reasons I like her, really is not even necessarily her character development, but also the lens she provides. And then also when she shows up, you get to see things like viewing Tyrion. Like she is a character who's a driver of Tyrion's sort of, hiding Shay and everything.
Yeah.
And should he be marrying her? Right. And so it's just such an interesting, she's an interesting lens and an interesting like plot mover.
Yeah, she's very, very important for George to get across everything that he needs to. She's in the right place at the right times.
Yeah. So it's just so super interesting.
Good. Great question.
Okay. All right, Jimmy, your next question.
All right. So you've settled down with your family. You're chilling out, and you come into some money, and you say, you know what? I'm going to start a business. What business would you start in Westeros?
Easy. Lager.
A lager.
Easy.
Is this because you played the Telltale game?
Absolutely. Ironwood, man. Boom. You can make all kinds of money selling that stuff. No, I think it'd be that or a blacksmith. Those are the only problem with being a blacksmith is that you then are sort of put you're in this guise where if you're providing weapons for a certain house, that could be bad. But I think if you're a logger, you're almost even better because then you're providing a resource that everybody needs.
It's true. It's true.
So
You could also be a gravedigger. That would probably
right.
do well in Westeros.
Yeah. Yeah. So a logger, a logger or a blacksmith, I think are probably the two best ways to go. You can also make quite a bit of money. Who's the I'm blanking on his name, but the blacksmith in the Dunk and Egg story when he's like Dunk's gotta like, okay,
he's
well,
bartering.
he's bartering with him, right?
Yeah, blacksmith would be good, and I think he'd be probably safe because there's so few of them. Like we see Gendry gets pat kind of like a pass because he's a blacksmith. So you get a little bit of privilege when it comes to that title. For me, I'd just be a hedge knight. I wouldn't live long, but damn, I would go out in a blaze of fire, just falling off my horse and breaking my neck. I think it'd be a really good time, and maybe settle some disputes, fighting a war, Blackfire Rebellion, that kind of thing. But
right, running a brothel would not be a good idea because then you become privy to information and people want to kill you,
and you get chlamydia.
Yeah,
that'll kill you.
Yep, that will. Okay. All right, Jimmy, what is your favorite scene in a Game of Thrones, the show?
My favorite scene in all of Game of Thrones.
I guess we could include House of the Dragon as well, if you think that it now eclipses one of your favorite scenes.
Honestly, dude, I really love whenever Daenerys and I man, Patty's walk is like so fresh in my mind, but I'm gonna pick something else. Whenever Dany burns the slavers and he's been talking all this smack, and it turns out that she knew exactly what he was saying, and the dragon burns him. It's a pretty boss moment. Like, I remember watching that with my wife, and she had never seen it, and she was like fist pumping. And for me, that's just one of those moments. I mean, obviously, there's the Red Wedding, and there's tons of other stuff, but that's like one of the ones I feel like we don't talk about a ton. And it's definitely probably my favorite moment. It's up there. Also, I mean, it's hard to pass up Eddard's or Ned's beheading, because when I watched it, I was like, wait, what? What? So that would have to be up there as well.
Yeah, for me, it's got to be, there's obviously like little small scenes too, which I'll talk about here in a second. But for me, I would say my single favorite scene has got to be Jon Snow, King in the North. I mean, it's my go-to, like, want to get hyped for Game of Thrones, even though it really doesn't end up doing anything. It's just such an epic scene. Plus, you add in like the part that comes before it, which is like his parentage and the Tower of Joy. So it's just a huge scene, and then that score by Ramin Djawadi is just absolutely freaking phenomenal, and everyone's standing up, and Lady Mormont, right? I can like quote it verbatim. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I mean, even, it's like, I was to say, even when Robbie gets crowned King of the North, that's a good scene. That's a great scene.
Yeah. It actually plays the same theme, but he hadn't made it that much better yet.
Yeah.
So that is really, really, really good. Another scene, which I don't know why, but it's one of my go-to scenes, is, and this is like a not in the book scene, when Jaime is talking to Ned in like the throne room, like, and he's talking about how, oh man, it's a terrible thing. I would have, oh, is that what you, then Ned Stark sort of comes back out of, oh, is that what you tell yourself at night? It's like, what? Like,
yo, Ned, pause, Ned.
Whoa. It's just like such a banger.
Yo, everyone hates on the last season, and I get it, but what about when Brienne gets knighted?
Oh, that's a really good
It's a good scene.
I'll tell you what, I go back and I watch the Night King thing a lot.
Really?
Yeah, because the music is just so good, and like just the final like shot. I know people are upset it was Arya, but this, like, the cinematography and everything is so good.
Yeah, for what it
It's
was, I didn't hate that nearly as much as the internet did, to be
yeah,
honest. I mean, surely I don't like the fact that it was subverted just to subvert it because like they had said it should have been John, but they wanted to give
yeah,
Arya something. So I don't love the reasoning behind it. But like as far as like the episode goes and just experiencing it, there's a little
right,
bit of plot armor that bothers me in that episode, but
right.
that scene I thought was pretty cool.
The visual too of Dany walking out in the final episode and like the dragon wings behind her is just badass. I mean,
Yeah,
I know it's like, yeah, I mean, it's whatever, but that picture is freaking sweet.
I've seen some people
And
say
then,
it's a little too on the nose, but I don't really care. I thought at least I
yeah,
thought it looked cool. Okay, it looked
Tyrion,
cool.
Tyrion's trial, and then like
Yeah.
another scene I go to a lot is when Tywin is walking up, and this is not in the books at all, but it's freaking sweet. When Tywin is walking up the throne and he's like telling Joffrey off, is so epic. Like
Yes.
it is so good. I go back and watch it like all the time. All right. Hey, we got a super chat here. So thank you very much for that. Do you think Dany will get angry enough at false Aegon stealing her throne to burn Westeros?
First off, thank you. That was very generous of you. Thanks for the 5 spot. And I do not. I actually have kind of I flip flop on this a lot, and I'll probably flip flop it on it again. But I currently believe that it is going to look like Dany did something terrible, but I don't believe that she will do it. But I do
Right.
believe that Fagon will be ruling when Dany comes to Westeros in the books. I believe that Fagon will be sitting the Iron Throne, and I think Cersei will probably be in Casterly Rock.
Yeah, I'm much more on the idea of I think Dany is going to somehow align herself with Dorne because I'm a big believer this whole crackpot theory I've pieced together about the crown. Who
like it.
knows?
Yeah.
And I think there is going to be something about Dany versus potentially young Griff, right? Or a 3-headed monster that is Jon Snow, young Griff, and Dany.
Could be wild. Could be absolutely wild.
Could be wildfire.
Oh my God. He did it. He said the thing. He said the thing.
Okay. All right. So you're because mine was favorite scene. So what's your question?
That was my last question. I asked you 4. I had 4 prepared.
Okay.
So that my final one was your profession, which you said logger. I was hoping you'd say, alchemist.
Oh no.
No, logger. Went with the logger.
Logger. Yeah, you don't want to be a farmer. Those get burned down. I did have one final question. It kind of goes with this. What is your least favorite scene in Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon?
I mean, my least favorite scene is
Ed Sheeran.
My least favorite scene is the entirety of episode 4 of season 8.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick something else, it would be going on a scavenging hunt for a White Walker to bring back to Cersei in the Dragon Pit. I thought that was just really terrible. Yeah. I think that is actually just as bad as anything that was awful in season 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
There's this, I kind of thought about this. It's not that it's not good and perhaps arguably like the most important scene, but I just can't watch it. I skip over it now. Whenever I go back and watch anything, I can't watch the Red Wedding. I just can't do it.
Really?
Dude, I just can't. It's just so.
But you're not saying it's the worst from like an execution standpoint. You're just saying
no. Yeah, from an execution standpoint, honestly, is for me, as much as I don't like that episode of season 8, because I can sort of view the back half of season 8 as not good. For me, what I didn't like is Baelish's death, because that to me was like the first like,
yeah, they don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, because I dislike that more. Because like for me, like because we were covering the final season and it was like obvious our podcast numbers literally were exploding. It was like a whirlwind. So and I loved the first 3 episodes. I was like, who knows how this is what's gonna happen. But it was like season 7, whatever, I don't know. honestly, like all the stuff with Sansa and Arya, to be honest, in season 7. But Baelish's death specifically, I was like, this is wrong.
They forgot.
Like
I
this,
felt like they forgot what to do with him.
yeah, it's just like they just didn't know what to do with him, and then it was just like all that build up. I totally thought he and Varys were gonna go blow for blow at the end, and it just felt like they're just killing him off to get rid of him.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. Yeah,
didn't like it at all, because I was fine if it's like if it was like a creative choice that I didn't like, but this felt like not like we're pushing through with this, and this is what we believe. Like Arya killing the Night King is like, hey, this is the story we want to tell. Okay, that felt like we don't know what to do.
Yeah. Another one that comes to mind, and someone mentioned in chat, is Tyrion arguing for Bran to be king. I thought that entire scene was really bad for multiple reasons. The first half of the last episode, I know everyone like hates what happens with Dany and Jon, but like from like just the execution of it, like I enjoyed what I was watching. Maybe shouldn't say enjoy, but like I was digging it, right? Like I was watching, I was like, well, okay, damn, like this is rough, right? But whenever they start doing this like council thing where they're trying to explain why the king, and then like just the justification for like why Tyrion even gets to talk as a prisoner, right. And then they're like, well, the North needs to be independent because we were independent for 1,000 years. Like, well, what about Dorne?
Right,
unbent and unbroken. You know what I mean? Like it kind of just rubbed me the wrong way. And that for me is the biggest thing in season 8 that I think
another thing which was totally kind of a waste. I mean, total waste was like, and it gets overlooked a lot. But man, they had built Grey Worm up to be this like awesome character, and then he's just like, well, bye. What? Like at least Mira reads, at least Bran being like, okay, we're gonna play the airplane game. What's that? You're gonna, like, you're gonna take off, it's just like him being like, all right, see ya, like, thanks. At least that sort of had some sense to it, because it was like he's like a weird, like almost a robot now. But yeah, Grey Worm, man, he had been so important. He'd seen Missandei's death. Like I thought it was gonna be this huge epic thing, and then just like, okay, see ya.
Yeah, rough.
So rough.
It's almost like they needed more time that Dave didn't want. But the good news is that we got plenty of time for House of the Dragon, and House of the Dragon is revitalizing our spirits and making us feel great. And there's some progress even on Winds of Winter. By God.
Yeah.
By God.
What do you think? What do you think we see first, winds or snow?
Winds.
Really?
Winds, because TV shows take so long to come together and then to shoot. And I think it's also going to be dependent on if it's true that Warner Brothers lost like $2 billion in 2021. There's a rumor that did. Yeah, that's not good.
No, they did.
That's not good.
It's not as bad as people think. So like part of the deal is, because they took on an insane amount of debt that they acquired from AT&T when Discovery merged / bought Warner Brothers. Streaming is down across the board. They're fine. But yeah, there are people overblowing it. Say they don't even have money to make like the Batman 2.
Well, that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. They've greenlit a ton of things that, and actually all the stuff where they were saying, hey, we're gonna be canceling all kinds of stuff. They've actually been much better. They just hired James Gunn to be the head of DC, and all of the other the thing too about it is, all of the problems at Warner Brothers are literally everywhere but HBO.
That is true. HBO is very strong.
Yeah. They're making moves across the board. Everywhere else, the only thing they did was they came out, they said, look, we got to like shut down Cartoon Network. Animation's costing too much money. We like can't be making Batgirl movies that aren't going to do well, that are testing with like 40s and the thing. You know what I mean? Like, all of those other problems, like Harry Potter is an absolute mess. They literally came in and they're like, HBO, you do whatever the hell you want. we got to fix everything else.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
House of the Dragon was a bona fide success. So
massive success. Yeah.
So even with all the green lights and everything, I still think it takes time to get those scripts written, to go into the editing process of the scripts, and then to shoot, and then go into that editing process. And it also depends on who they want to use. If it's just Miguel, then he's probably going to be available. But if they also want Ryan Condell to be there as somebody to support the show, maybe they wait till a little later in House of the Dragon. I hope that it doesn't come out while House of the Dragon's on. I actually would.
No.
I'm a pretty big supporter of doing one show at a time and not having a bunch of stuff on at once, because we're seeing it with Marvel and Star Wars. Like, people do get overburdened with too many shows at once. Like Andor's been great, but the viewership's not what it could have been maybe if they had kind of divvied up the time. So I just
I will say Disney is doing something very interesting with Andor, which can't really do with Game of Thrones, although they did try. I mean, they put the first episode of House of the Dragon on YouTube. Disney is going to be releasing Andor, the first 2 episodes they just announced, on FX, because they now own Fox. So like on cable, which is kind of interesting. I mean, FX isn't like part of your HBO tier package, but don't know. If it ends up doing well, we could see an enormous shift in the streaming services now saying, hey, we would be willing to put something on TV. Of course, Warner Brothers is kind of the unfortunate one in the bunch, and that they don't have your sort of direct antenna channel, because like CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, which DBC they also own, right? Well, Fox actually is still their own. They still own that. But so Warner Brothers doesn't own that. So they usually can license their shows out to all these other people. But I would not be surprised if we don't get in the near future a Breaking Bad level Game of Thrones show that could be on regular like cable or satellite. That would be very interesting. I'd be down if, like, Dunk and Egg in theory could be like an A&E type show, right?
Yeah, it could definitely be less graphic, and I don't think it'll be as sexual in nature, which is going to be the big one. I would prefer it all just to stay on HBO myself, but that's just me. I'm an HBO snob.
Well, I am too, but
the times are changing.
The times are certainly a changing. Some more questions here from the audience. TK, here's a random question: is it true Jon is if it is true Jon is a Targaryen, do you think he will bond one of Dany's dragons like he kind of did in the show? If so, which one?
Yeah, I could see it being Rhaegal. I could see that. I could see him getting a dragon and bonding it. It seems like a very fitting thing to happen with Jon. I don't know exactly how that's going to pan out though.
The whole Night King getting Viserion thing, I don't think it's going to happen. I still do believe there will be a Night King like person in the books that is like the leader of the White Walkers, whether that's like just some sort of general or it's like Euron being the one controlling them, perhaps like the Horn or whatever. But I do still believe in the whole idea of like an ice dragon, whether it's in the wall or we know we've seen them right off in the distance. Who knows?
Yeah.
Whatever. So I do think that, but I do think Jon will ride a dragon, definitely. Another question here from the chat: do you guys think the general reading population will be disappointed when Jon doesn't end up being king? I see the possibility of that as basically zero against the point, I think, of George's writing.
Well, we know Bran's going to be king, because that was one of the points that he gave Dan and Dave. So I mean, he could change it. So there's still room for speculation, but I think Bran will be king. And anyone who thinks Jon's going to be king is probably going to be sorely disappointed, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I think it's more just in line of the idea of perhaps if Jon is more in touch or down to be like Rhaegar's son, right? Because I think it's just more likely that Jon and Dany team up in the books than Jon and Dany go head to head in the books.
Yeah. I would agree. I think Dany's plot line is definitely going to tie more into the White Walkers. And instead of just being like, hey, we need to convince her to fight for us, I think that she will likely take on that mission as like Azor Ahai, probably. But I don't know. We'll see.
I've still always been a big believer in that. I think what's going to happen with Dany is she's going to come over and have to save Westeros, and she'll die doing so. And then rather than being sort of like a tyrant like she was in the books, she comes over. She never claims the Iron Throne, but she's the one who actually sort of like saves everyone from the White Walkers. She dies in doing so, and then her whole life was this journey to come reclaim Westeros, and she did from the White Walkers. Not necessarily to come over and be queen.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to think about how that plays with Aegon's prophecy now that we know at least that portion of it is book canon. Like, you know, a Targaryen must sit the Iron Throne. Like, is that Targaryen Aegon while Dany's off actually fighting the real fight? You know, and there's so many things that have to play into this. Maybe Dany does sit the throne in the books, but then ends up dying and her reign is super short. I could definitely see that happening. But I agree with you. I think she will die protecting Westeros, and I think it'll be against the White Walkers, because I do believe that the White Walkers are like the real ultimate climax of
definitely. It's a song of ice and fire, not the Game of Thrones.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys for coming in here, hanging out. You know, this is just a fun little Q&A we wanted to pop on and talk some stuff. We don't, just rapid fire, right?
Yeah,
do some of these theories. So Jim and I have a lot more coming for you guys. We're going to be doing a huge list in the next few weeks of very detailed theories about House of the Dragon, all of the big House of the Dragon theories. Going to do that for the next couple of weeks, and then piece together this sort of big mega compilation, and then we'll be diving back into Storm of Swords until we get news on wins or any of the other stuff. So absolute fun time as always hanging out with you guys here on YouTube. Thanks you guys hanging out on the podcast so much. So awesome. And guys, remember that winter is coming.